Good morning, students. Today we are going to learn the new chapter, that is the sensory organs. The sensory organs system, the sense organ system is for bsc1 nursing students, dhi, that is health second year students, dmlt, that is lab technician second year students. So for all these three courses, this portion is there, that is the sensory organs present in the human body, the sensory organs which are present in the human body. Now, the definition of this sense organ is an organ of the body which responds to external stimulus by conveying impulse to the sensory nervous system is called sensory organ or sense organ. So the sensory organ or the sense organ is an organ which responds to the external stimulus, which responds to the external informations by conveying these informations to the sensory nervous system. Hence they are called sensory organs or sense organs. So this is the clear definition of the sensory organ or the sense organ. The sense organ is the one organ which responds to the external stimulus, which responds to the external changes of the environment, and this stimulus, it conveys the impulses to the sensory nervous system, and such organs are called sensory organs or the sense organs. In organisms, a sensory organ consists of a group of sensory cells that respond to the stimulus. In organisms, the sensory organ consists of a group of sensory cells, which respond to the stimuluses, the external stimulus. Next point, these sensory receptor cells of the sense organs transmit the sensory information towards central nervous system via cranial and the spinal nerves. The sensory receptor cells of the sense organs, the sense organ contains the sensory receptor cells. So these cells transmit the sensory informations to the central nervous system, that is brain and spinal cord, via or through the cranial and spinal nerves. The cranial and the spinal nerves take up these informations of the sensory receptor cells of these sense organs and bring them to the central nervous system for further action. Sense organs are the organs that respond to external stimuli by conveying to the sensory nervous system. These are the organs, sense organs are the organs that respond to the external stimuli. Human beings have 5 basic senses. We all have 5 basic senses. The first one is the sense of touch. Second is sense of sight. Then sense of hearing, and sense of smell, and the sense of taste. So these are the 5 basic senses and these senses are governed by the specialized sense organs. They are called 5 sense organs. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ? ಪಂಚೇಂದ್ರಿಯಗಳು. 5 ಪಂಚೇಂದ್ರಿಯಗಳು ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬ ಮನುಷ್ಯನಲ್ಲಿದೆ. The first one is touch, ಅಂದರೆ ಸ್ಕಿನ್. ದೆನ್ ಸೈಟ್, ಕಣ್ಣು. ಹಿಯರಿಂಗ್, ಕಿವಿ. ಸ್ಮೆಲ್, ಮೂಗು. ಮತ್ತು ಟೇಸ್ಟ್, ನಾಲಿಗೆ. So all these 5 senses, they have the special sense organs. 5 sense organs, panchendriyagalu. Coming to the next point, the sensing organs associated with each sense send information to the brain to help us to understand. To understand, the sense informations are carried to the brain through the sensory organs. Next point, sense organs are specialized organs that are composed of sensory neurons. They are composed of sensory neurons. Sense organs are very specialized organs which are composed of sensory neurons. The sense organs, the special sense organs are eyes, ear, nose, tongue and skin. ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ನಾನು 5 ಪಂಚೇಂದ್ರಿಯಗಳು: ಐ, ಇಯರ್, ನೋಸ್, ಟಂಗ್ and the skin. Auditory and olfactory apparatuses are also sense organs. Auditory and olfactory apparatuses, they are also specialized sense organs. Now we'll start with the first sense organ, that is the skin. Skin is for touch. The touch is sensed by the skin, and that impulse or the information is carried to the central nervous system, that is the brain and the spinal cord. Now the structure of the skin is very clear in the notes which I have already given. The sense organs complete notes I have given, and in this one the skin, the figure of the skin, the transverse section of the skin shows different parts. It's very clear. So once again I will show you in the book. So this is the skin, section of the skin which comprises of epidermis and dermis. This is the epidermis and this is dermis. This is the hair follicle and this is the hair shaft, and this is the germinal layer here below, and there are different type layers. About 4 to 5 layers are present in the epidermis. The dermis contains the fat cells, then different types of connective tissue here. So this is about the skin. The skin is the largest organ which forms the outer covering of the body. You know this one, that is the skin is the outer covering of our body. So all the organisms have the skin, that is the outer covering. The outer covering of the body is the skin, which is the largest organ, which is the covering of the body, and area is about 1.5 to 2.0 square meters. So it is about 1.5 to 2.0, 1.5 to 2 square meters in adults. In adults the area is about 1.5 to 2 square meters. Next point, it varies in thickness in palm and hand and in palms of the hand and in soles of the feet. It varies in thickness in the palm of the hand and in the sole of the feet, where it is very thick. So the palm is thick, the sole is thick. The epidermis is very thick without hairs. Here the palm and the sole contains the epidermis, which is very thick and without hair. So this is the palm. You cannot see the hair here. So this is the palm region, and the epidermis is very thick here. Epidermis is very thick. The outer layer is epidermis. Whereas in all other parts, epidermis is thin with hair. In other parts, the epidermis is thin like this here. You can see here. It is thin with the hair here on the hair. So it's very thin and with the hairs in other parts of the body. Coming to the next point, skin has two layers. Superficial epidermis made up of stratified squamous epithelium. Epidermis superficial, which is made up of stratified squamous epithelium, and the deeper dermis made up of connective tissue. This is made up of connective tissue. The dermis is made up of connective tissue. Epidermis and the dermis are the two parts of the skin. The superficial part is epidermis and the deeper part is the dermis. Next point, at the junction of two layers, the layer of dermis is thrown into folds. The layer of the dermis is thrown into folds called dermal papillae. Dermal papillae, which is in the form of folds. Coming to the epidermis consists of stratified squamous keratinizing epithelium and subdivided into 5 layers. So this epidermis is made up of stratified squamous epithelial cells, and it is subdivided. It is again divided into 5 layers. 5 layers. 5 ಲೇಯರ್ಗಳಿದೆ ಎಪಿಡರ್ಮಿಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿ. 5 layers. The first one is the deeper, coming from deep side downwards. Deep 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. So coming from the deep side, deep layer, the name of the deep layer is called Stratum Bacillae. Stratum Bacillae. Second one is Stratum Spinosum. The third one is Stratum Granulosum. Fourth one is Stratum Lucidium. Fifth one is Stratum Carnium. So 5 layers are there, and starting from the deep layer, the Stratum Bacillae will start now. So the first one is the Stratum Bacillae from the deep layer. It is deepest basal layer of the epidermis. It is the deepest lower layer or the basal layer of the epidermis. Next one, it is made up of single layer of columnar cells that rest on the basal laminae. It is made up of a single layer of columnar cells which rest on the basal laminae. There is a basal laminae on which these columnar cells rest. Next point, the cells undergo mitotic division and give off cells called as keratinocytes. It has the capacity of undergoing the mitotic division, that is cell division. So it undergoes the mitotic cell division or germination and give rise to the cells called as keratinocytes. The keratinocytes, which form the superficial layer of the epidermis. The superficial layer of the epidermis is formed by this basal layer. The basal layer is also known as germinal layer. This basal layer is also called as germinal layer because it gives rise to number of cells by mitotic cell division. The upper cells of the epidermis are produced by this basal layer, that is the stratum basilae. Second one is stratum spinosum. It consists of several layers of keratinocytes which are polygonal in shape. These cells appear to have spines. They look like the spines. Hence, this layer is called spinosum layer. Coming to the next one, third one, Stratum Granulosum. It consists of 1 to 5 layers of flattened cells containing granules. These cells contain granules, hence they are called as granulosum layer. Granules in cytoplasm. Granules contain protein called keratohyalin. Keratohyalin protein is present in the granules of the cells. Coming to the fourth one, Striatum Lucidium. The cells appear clear, and in some kind they are without clear cell boundaries. They are in some kind without clear cell boundaries they appear. The last one is Stratum Carnium. Stratum Carnium. It is the superficial layer of epidermis with dead cells. It is the superficial layer of the epidermis with the dead cells. They are not living cells, they are dead cells. Without nucleus and organelles. They don't have nucleus and the organelles also. Cytoplasm is dead inside. These cells are flattened and scale-like, containing keratin. These cells contain keratin and they are flattened scale-like, chip idage. The cells are held together by a layer of lipid which makes the layer waterproof. The cells are held together by a layer of lipid which makes the layer waterproof. This layer is extremely thick in palm and sole region, as these regions are subjected to maximum friction. So this layer is thick in palm region, this palm region, and the sole region. ಕಾಲ್ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ತಳಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು ಸೋಲ್ ರೀಜನ್. ಹಿಮ್ಮಡಿ, ಸೋಲ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಹಿಮ್ಮಡಿ, sole region, as these regions are subjected to maximum friction. So they are subjected to the friction, hence this point, these parts are with a thick layer of stratum corneum. There is no blood vessel nerves in the epidermis, but its deeper layer are bathed in interstitial fluid of dermis, which provides oxygen and nutrients to epidermal cells. So there are no blood vessels and nerves in the epidermis, the upper layer, with 5 layers epidermis, but the deeper layer are bathed in interstitial fluid. There is an interstitial fluid below the basal layer, and from which it receives, the epidermis cells receive the oxygen and the nutrients. So the nutrients and the oxygen is supplied to the epidermis through the interstitial fluid. Then the next one, hairs. Secretion of sebaceous glands and ducts of sweat glands pass through epidermis to reach the skin surface. The hairs, ಕೂದಲುಗಳು, secretion of the sebaceous gland and the ducts of sweat glands. They pass through the epidermis to reach the superficial layer of the skin or the skin surface. Next point, the color of the skin is due to melanin pigment. It is one type of pigment, the melanin, and this gives the color to the skin: black skin, white skin, red skin, likewise. So the skin is colored due to the melanin, a dark pigment derived from the amino acid tyrosine, secreted by melanocytic cells of germinal layer. In the germinal layer, the melanocytic cells are present, and these melanocytic cells, they secrete an amino acid called tyrosine, and this tyrosine is nothing but the melanin, which gives the color to the skin. Germinal layer of the epidermis. It is also influenced by the pigment like hemoglobin and oxyhemoglobin present in the blood circulating through the skin. So through the skin the blood is circulated, and this blood color is also given to the skin also. So skin may look like reddish type due to the blood color. Coming to the dermis, the next layer is the dermis. The dermis is tough and elastic, formed by connective tissue with the matrix containing collagen and elastic fibers. The dermis is tough and elastic, formed by connective tissue with the matrix containing collagen and the elastic fibers. It contains the elastic and the collagen fibers and the connective tissue. Rupture of elastic fibers occur when the skin is overstretched. So when the skin is overstretched, the elastic fibers are ruptured, resulting in permanent stretch mark found in pregnancy and obesity. In the obesity and pregnancy, these permanent marks will be remained by stretching the skin. The skin is stretched during the pregnancy or during the obesity. Next point, collagen fibers bind water and give the skin its strength. The collagen fibers bind with the water and give the skin its skin strength. As the ability declines with the age, wrinkles develop on the skin. The ability declines with the age. This ability declines with the age. As the age goes up, then wrinkles will develop on the skin. Macrophages and mast cells are also present in the dermis. The dermis contains areolar and adipose tissue beneath or under. So the dermis also contains the adipose tissue and the areolar tissue. Apart from all these things, the structures found in the dermis are many structures are found in the dermis are: the first one, small blood vessels and the lymph vessels. Blood vessels and the lymph vessels are also found in the dermis. Then secondly, sensory nerve endings are present. Then thirdly, sweat glands and their ducts. Also present. Number 4, hairs. Hairs present. Then fifth, arrector pillae muscles. Arrector pillae, they are the very specialized muscles which are present in the dermal region of the skin. So arrector pillae muscles. Then sixth one, sebaceous glands. Seventh one, nails. Nails are also present in the dermal region of the skin. So at the tip of the hand we have the nails here, and these nails are nothing but they are the extensions, or they are the uh, parts present in the dermal region of the skin. Now coming to the first one, that is the small blood vessel and lymph vessels. Arterioles from fine network with capillary branches supplying blood to sweat gland, sebaceous gland, hair follicle and dermis. Lymph vessels supply nutrients. So these blood vessels, they supply the arterioles and the fine network of the capillary branches. They supply the nutrients and the oxygen to all the parts of the skin. Next one, the sensory nerve endings. The sensory nerve endings are specialized nerve endings called sensory receptors present in dermis, are sensitive to touch, temperature, pressure and pain. So the touch, the temperature and the pressure and the pain is felt by the dermis through the sensory receptor cells. Hence, these sensory nerve endings are present with the sensory receptors in the dermal region. The nerve impulses generated by the sensory receptors are transmitted to the spinal cord by sensory nerves and then to brain where it is perceived. So the nerve impulses generated by the sensory receptors are carried or transmitted to the spinal cord and then to the brain for further action. Coming to the third one, that is the sweat gland. These glands produce sweat or perspiration. These glands produce sweat, bevaru. Sweat andre bevaru. Bevaru or perspiration. There are two types. One is typical or eocrine sweat glands, and second one is atypical or apocrine. Eocrine and apocrine. That is the typical and atypical. Two types of sweat glands are found in the epidermis. Dermis. Coming to the typical type of sweat gland. These typical type of sweat gland consist of single long duct which open on the skin through tiny pores. The lower end of the tube is body which is coiled and lies in the dermis. The duct of the gland is lined by single layer of cuboidal epithelial cells. It is innervated by nerves. Secretions of gland, that is the sweat, is clear watery fluid which regulates body temperature. The palm and the sole contain maximum number of this type of typical sweat glands. Coming to the atypical types, atypical type of sweat gland. This type of sweat glands are found in axilla, that is the armpit here. This is the armpit. ಕೈ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಇರುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಪಿಟ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ it is called as axial or armpit, axial or armpit. So this type are found in the axilla or in the armpit and genital area of the male and female. They are large in size with branching ducts and open into the hair follicles. These sweat glands become active at puberty. At puberty, they are activated and play important role in sexual arousal. Sexual arousal, that is sexual instigation or stimulation. The instigation or the stimulation of the sex is by these sweat glands secretions during the puberty. These glands, atypical glands, sweat glands are present in the axial region, idu armpit anತಾರೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ, axial or the armpit region, and the genital region, genital area, male and female genital area. And these secrete the secretions which are responsible for the sexual arousal or the sexual instigation or stimulation. The secretion is viscous. The secretion is viscous, ಒಂಥರ ಅಂಟಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, and odorless, ವಾಸನೆ ಇರಲ್ಲ, ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ವಾಸನೆ ಇರಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಡ್ಯೂ ಟು ದ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ಡಿಕಂಪೋಸಿಷನ್, ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಾ ಮತ್ತು ವೈರಸ್ಗಳು, ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಾ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆ ಒಂದು ವಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬಂದಾಗ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಾ ಇತ್ತಂದರೆ ಡಿಕಂಪೋಸಿಷನ್ ಟೇಕ್ಸ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದಿ ಗಿವ್ ಆಫ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಓಡರ್ ವಿಚ್ ಅಟ್ರಾಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ದ ಅಪೋಸಿಟ್ ಸೆಕ್ಸ್. ದ ಬಾಡಿ ಓಡರ್, ಮನುಷ್ಯನ ದೇಹದ ವಾಸನೆ, ಓಡರ್ ಅಂದರೆ ವಾಸನೆ, ಆ ವಾಸನೆ ಈ ವಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಫ್ಲೂಯಿಡ್ನಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಟಿಪಿಕಲ್ ಟೈಪ್ ಆಫ್ sweat glands which are present in the axial and the genital area, and these are very important glands, sweat glands, which are activated at puberty, and they have important role in sexual arousal. So it is a viscous type of fluid. Startingly, when it is secreted, it is odorless, but due to the bacterial decomposition, it gives off the body odor, and this odor attracts the opposite sex. The opposite sex is attracted by this atypical sweat gland secretion. Coming to the fourth one, that is the hair. Hair are present on almost all parts of the body except palm and sole. ಪಾಮ್ ಮತ್ತು ಸೋಲ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಕೂದಲುಗಳು ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಎಕ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ ದೀಸ್ ಟೂ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್, ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಪಾಮ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದಿ ಸೋಲ್. ಬಟ್ ಇನ್ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆಲ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ almost all part of the body, the hairs are present on the skin. Hair have following parts. Hair have the following parts. First one is the shaft, which is visible part above the skin. The shaft is visible part above the skin. Then the root embedded in the dermis, embedded part. Third one is the bulb, the expanded lower end. The hair follicle surrounded tubular sheath. The hair papillae or bulb, the extension layer of the dermis which produce hair and pushed upwards. The hair is produced and it is pushed upwards. Then this is the hair. Then the next one is the arrector pillae muscle. Arrector pillae muscle, bands of smooth muscles which are attached to dermal papillae, one on one side and to the hair follicle on other side. Contraction of these muscles make the hair stand erect and raises the skin around hair by the stimulation of sympathetic nerve in the response to fear and cold. During fear and cold, the hair stand erect due to the constriction of this arrector pillae muscle. Coming to the sebaceous glands, these glands are associated with the hair follicles present almost all part of the body except palm and sole. The glands consist of secretory epithelial cells derived from hair follicles. They secrete an oily antimicrobial substance called as sebum, 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 in the hair follicle and later passed on the skin. Its functions are, the first function is the oily nature helps to keep the skin and the hair soft. Next one, it prevents drying of skin and cracking, also stopped. Next one, it makes the skin resistant to moisture. Next, it gives a shiny appearance to the hair. The fifth function is it acts as a antimicrobial agent, prevents the infections. The infections are prevented by this one. Coming to the last one, nails. Nails are also present in the dermal region of the skin. So the seventh one is the nail. These are hard, horny, keratin, solid plates of modified horny cells of the epidermis and hairs. These are the hard, horny, keratinized, solid plates of modified horny cells of the epidermis and hair that form a protective covering on the dorsal surface of the finger. On the dorsal surface of the finger here, on the dorsal surface, these nails are present. Form a protective covering on the dorsal surface of the fingers and toes. Fingers and the toes. ಕಾಲು ಬೆರಳಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಇರ್ತವೆ ಉಗುರುಗಳು. The main function of the nail is to provide a firm support for the fingertips. The fingertips is having a firm support by the nails. So the main function of the nail is to give or is to provide a firm support to the finger tips. So the nails are also present in the dermal region. So the dermal region is very important, which is made up of the structures. First one is the small blood vessel and the lymph vessels. Second is the sensory nerve endings. Third is sweat glands and their ducts. Two types of sweat glands, atypical and typical types. Then hairs. Then erector pili muscles. Then sixth one is sebaceous glands. The seventh one is the nails. So all these parts are present in the dermal region of the skin. So I think today we will stop here only. Tomorrow we will take up the functions of the skin, and next one the eye. So tomorrow we will take up the functions of the skin that closes the skin. Then the next one, the second one is the eye, kannu, the structure of the eye, function of the eye, and the parts of the eye region. All the things tomorrow we will study. So thank you very much.